Hello everyone, thanks for stopping by. Today I'm going to be building a push stick slash push block, whatever you want to call it, as you probably already know by the thumbnail. In case you don't know, I imagine everybody does, but push stick is a way to push something through the table saw and keep your hands away from the blade. That way it's just a little safer. So I kind of dug into my scrap pile and grabbed a whole bunch of scrap pieces of this 3/4 that I had, or 1x. It's basically 3/4 of an inch now, but after I planed it down. Anyway, so I dug through here and I'm trying to come up with something. What I'm planning on building is something kind of with a handle. What I was thinking is I'm going to use this piece kind of on the bottom. I'll glue this one to it just to get a little more thickness here. And then I'm going to be building a handle to go on top. And what my initial plan is to model the handle after something that we grab onto in the shop and that's fairly comfortable to hang onto. So what I'm planning on using, kind of as a template, is this handle. So after digging through some of these scrap pieces, I came up with these pieces over here. What I think I'm going to do is plan on kind of putting that shape, roughly that shape, onto the piece. But I wanted to get a little more thickness than this, so I'm going to glue together these two pieces to get a little more thickness there. And then I plan on cutting off the bottom of those at a 30-degree angle, I think, to mount onto these to give my handle something, a little bit of an angle to it. So let's see if we can get this together, kind of like it is in my head. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but I'm gonna give it a shot. So the first thing I'm gonna do is kind of cut the pieces roughly to size. Those I will glue together first and then cut them down so that way they match. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. So that's what we'll do is we'll glue these together, clamp them, let them dry, and then we'll work on cutting these ones down. So let's get going. Okay, so I'm going to glue these up. Unfortunately, these are really the only clamps I have in this pair of vice grips that I can kind of make work. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple screws in it in the middle. I'll use the clamps on the outer edges kind of, and then I want to put a couple screws in the middle to kind of help draw that together. But I don't want to put the screws through where it's going to be part of the handle. What I'm going to do is try to put the screws through where the cutout is going to be for the handle. That way I'm not screwing up any of the center part. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of lay out where I want this on here and kind of then trace the hole into the piece so I know where I can drill those screws. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm not going to make the hole as big as it is on here. I'm going to make it a little smaller here because I don't need it all the way down to here. I'm going to just cut it off right in here somewhere. So basically I'm just going to kind of trace the whole thing for now. And obviously I'm tracing the trigger, but the trigger ain't going to be there. So I'm just going to kind of roughly rough in where the trigger, if the trigger was gone. Something like that. And then I'm going to cut, like I said, I'm going to cut it off. I figured I was going to cut it off right in there. Yep. Basically right in here. And I can probably tighten this whole thing up a little bit. So I'm going to, because since the trigger won't be there, I can kind of make that hole a little smaller. Probably something more like this. So that is roughly where the hole is going to be, somewhere in here. So that means I can put a couple screws in there somewhere. Perfect. Now let's get this glued up. Alright, now that I got that basically glued up, let it dry. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple more screws down here. I'm going to be cutting this part off down here anyway, so I'm going to put a couple more screws down there just to help pull it together. Alright, there, let that part dry. And then I'm going to cut down the other parts a little bit. And go on from there. Okay, now I'm going to cut the bottom piece to length. I'm not picking any particular length, I'm just cutting it off. I'm just squaring up the end of this piece. I'll go past that hole that's in it, the old nail hole, and just chop it off right there. It would help if I plug my chop saw in. Okay, now the chop saw is plugged in, let's try that again. Alright, there, now we got this piece. I'm going to have this face facing down against the material. That way there's this little edges up out of the way. And then this piece will be right on there, something like this. Right a little bit towards the back. Yeah, probably something like in there. What I would like to do is add a little lip on the back of this to kind of hold the back of the material that you're pushing on. So what I'm kind of thinking I'm going to do is rip a little of the bottom of this off on the table saw to get a little notch in it back there. It's either that or we fasten a piece on the end of this somehow. I don't really like the idea of that. I mean, I guess if I glued it on, but I'm afraid that it won't stay there if I'm pushing on something with it. If I screw it in, then I got to screw in the way. Because I'm kind of envisioning this piece will be kind of semi-sacrificial if this thing gets, because the saw is going to cut into it occasionally depending on how wide of something I'm cutting. So I gotta think about that for a little bit. But so I think I'm gonna mount that somewhere right in there. So I'm gonna glue that up and just pile a bunch of stuff on top of it to hold it together. Because my clamps are being used on the other part. Okay, so I'm gonna glue this up. And hopefully this, I don't know, kind of second guessing myself a little bit on this whole design, but maybe it'll be fine. So I'm gonna stick this. I'm just guessing where seems good to me. Back in here, that way if my handle's right here, it seems like a good place to push. So that's there. I'm going to find something heavy to set on that. This should do the trick. There. And let that concrete block sit there for a while. Holding that together and let that dry up. And then, so I'll probably check back here tomorrow and finish this up, or in a few hours or something. Probably tomorrow. I don't think this is real fast setting. It does say fast set time. Clamp for a minimum of 30 minutes. Do not stress joints for 24 hours. Alright. Maybe we'll check back here in half an hour, 45 minutes. And take this apart, take the clamps off it, and start cutting that down to size. I think we should be good. Okay. We're back. It's been about 35, 40 minutes. So let's see how we fared. Move this out of the way. Well, I think that'll work. Doesn't have to be. It should be. It'll get stronger over time anyway. But all right, good. So I'll. That one's pretty much done. I'll clean up this glue with a knife a little bit, and that piece is pretty much ready to go until I decide whatever I'm doing for a backstop here. I don't need that right now, but I think it'd be a good idea to have it. So I still got to figure out how I want to put something here, or what exactly I want to do. Anyway, all right, let's get this one opened up. So that's apart, or it's together, I should say. What I'm going to do is kind of finish tracing my shape on here a little bit, and then I'll run the drill down through there, and then use the saw that we're tracing to figure out where exactly this is going. Okay. So basically we're going to round off the front of this a little bit, kind of like this. And basically that's nothing really going to happen there, but and then round this down like this. And my plan is to cut this off, oh, I don't know, somewhere in here at roughly a 30-degree angle. Something like that. And then this side will just kind of probably finish that curve out a little bit. Bring it straight down into the to the 30-degree line. Oh, kind of something like that. Well, maybe not quite. It's probably going to come back a little bit more like this. We'll see. All right, let's drill those holes first, get that cut out, and then we'll cut out the outside. I'm not even sure if my saw blade will reach all the way through that, so that'll be interesting. Let's get that drilled out. Okay, now I'm going to drill out those holes. There, now we can cut those out. I think it's cracked. It's cracked right up almost where my line is. That's why I had my line where I did. So I'm going to do that. glue a little bit there. That's fine because I'm going to round over the edges. Alright, we're getting close. Okay, I got it clamped down over here again because where I cut this out from the other side, the blade was angled a little, tipping a little bit from the pressure. So I'm just going to try to straighten it up a little bit. Okay, that's better. Now, this is what I'm thinking. Oh, I still got to cut this curve out over here. And then what I'm going to do is take a round over bit and round over all of this with the router. Make that a little smoother and sand it out good. But let's cut that corner off. There. I wonder if I should make that a little bit skinnier right through here. I'm trying to decide if once it's rounded over if it'll be good or not. If I wanna. Yeah, I think it'll be fine. Definitely a lot beefier than I expected it to be. Now, like I said, I'm making it up as I'm going along, so I still gotta clean off a little bit. Edges out there, but that's fine. But we're getting there. Generally, what's gonna look like. Well, all right, let's sand it a little bit maybe, and then take the round over to it. Took random Morbit sander and sanded this all the way around. Sanded the surfaces a little bit. Got this a little bit nicer. Now I'm gonna take a 1/2 inch round over bit in the router and round off all the edges all the way around. And on the other side. I'm not going to do it down here on the bottom where it's going to hook to the base. I am going to do the inside of the handle part, so I'll have to move the clamp before I do that. But so I'm going to do the outside first. Okay, so here's my handle so far. It's all rounded over, smooth. I think it feels pretty good. It's solid. So I think that's going to work nice. And here's my bottom part, and that's going to go on there. I realized that I probably should do more than just glue it there because I don't really know how to really clamp it together. So I think what I'm going to do is put a couple dowels in through it, so that way that gives it a little bit something more. Being that I didn't think about this at a time, I don't have any dowels. So what I do have, and I think will work, I know will work just as well, is an old applicator brush for some poly that's all hard and used up. So what I'm going to do is use the handle and cut 2 pieces for dowel in there, get a drill bit the same size, and drill a couple holes, and put it in there with some glue, and again, I don't know how I'm gonna hold them together, but clamp them together, drive them together as good as I can, and then it should be good enough. I mean, it's really, this isn't need to be as my father always says, we ain't building the piano. So it doesn't need to be perfect. So that's my plan. Is I'm gonna give that a shot. I'll cut these up, drill those holes, and then glue this together, and then we should be pretty close to done. I'm gonna probably at least hit the handle part. I don't know about this sled part here, but at least hit the handle with some poly. Probably before I glue it together. So no, after I glue it together. And if I get some poly on the bottom, it don't matter. So this upper piece probably gets some poly on it, but so let's see how that turns out. Okay, I drilled out my holes, cut my pieces. I got them in here. Now I need to figure out transfer them onto this piece. So all I'm going to do is kind of like I said, I put them in there, and then I'll be able to set it on here where I want it, and then I'm going to kind of trace around them with the pencil so I know roughly where to drill them. Like I said, this thing doesn't need to be perfect, so if it's off by a little bit, that's okay. So I know roughly where to drill. The other thing I noticed, the only drill bits I had was those spade bits that would have a screw on the end of them to help draw them in, and which are great for when you're trying to do rough drilling. They're not real good for finished holes. And I tried it on a few test pieces before I did it into this, and it was splitting them. So what I did first is pre-drill them with a smaller bit, so that way that screw section of that drill bit doesn't spread the wood too much and split it. Okay, and then I also put a piece of tape on the drill bit so as a marker for where I'm drilling to. Now it's not a super tight fit, so I can test fit it. Look at that. I think that's pretty good. I might need to go a touch deeper with the holes because it's not letting it seat all the way down, but it's pretty close, so I'm happy with that. There we go. Nice. So now I'm going to glue that up. I'm probably going to I think I'm going to glue it and maybe block this between a few pieces of wood. Some blocks on each side somehow to just kind of stabilize it, and then I think I'm going to set that concrete block on it again like I did with the lower pieces, because I don't see any other way of me being able to clamp that together. Yeah, that's about the only way I can come up with. I don't think my C-clamp opens anywhere near that wide. No, there's no way to do that unless I were to put like a board through here and clamp down on each side of it. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. That's not that big a deal. That won't be that hard. So just put this through here like this. And if I put clamps on each side, I can clamp and hold that in place while it's drying up. So that's my plan, just like that. So let's get we'll do that over there on that bench because I don't want to get the glue on the table saw. Alright, so that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so this is all been clamped for quite a while. I don't know if anyone noticed in the video, but when I put this on in the video, I actually put the handle on backwards. And luckily, just after I turned the camera off, when I was going to leave it and let it dry, I realized that it was on backwards. So I pulled it apart and spun it around and clamped it back together. So anyway, it is the right way now, and I'm going to take clamps off and then throw some polyurethane on the handle part. So let's see how it looks with that. Right. I mainly like to throw the polyurethane on there just to kind of seal it up, especially this area here where you're really going to be touching it all the time. The rest of it, you're not touching as much, so I'm not as worried about it. They'll just make it last a little longer. Like I said, not that it's like a really important piece or anything, but it will, it's one of those pieces you're going to use a lot in the shop, so just like throw a little bit of something on there to seal it up a little bit. And it does make it look a little bit nicer. I kind of knew I'd end up doing this. Just kind of coating it all anyway. I originally said I wasn't gonna, but I kind of knew myself well enough to know that I just would, because you're here doing it, you might as well just throw a little more on there. Of course, I didn't sand any of the rest of it or anything, which actually is probably a good reason to poly, though. I can hit it with a real light sandpaper afterwards, and it'll actually be pretty nice. Still haven't figured out what I'm doing with the push end of this. That'll come later. I'm not that worried about that. One of the things I'm thinking about doing is, this is just version 1 anyway. I got a feeling I'm going to end up making something a little different later on. But for our very first one, first attempt, version 1, it turned out alright. And there. My pusher. Okay, so the poly is done drying. Now I figured out what I'm going to do to add a notch in the back of this to help to grip onto the back of boards when you're pushing them through the table saw. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a notch into the back of this to slide a piece of wood into, and just a little bit will be sticking out, enough to catch on the bottom of wood. And at the same time, I'm not going to screw it or anything. It's just going to be glued up in there in place that way. I don't have to worry about any screws or anything getting in the way of the blade, but there should be enough there to hold it in place nicely. So that's the plan. And how I'm going to do that is on my crosscut sled here that I built. I'm going to set up 2 stops. Well, I guess I'm not gonna set up 2 stops because I don't have enough. You know what? Well, no, we'll think about it. What I was gonna do is set up 2 stops so I would have each side of the piece, but I can't do that. So I got to think about it a little bit. I guess I can cut the back part, and I'll just manually move it over to where it needs to go, and then I can kind of fill it in between just by looking at it. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, now I got my notch cut in here, as you can see, and this is a really snug fit in there, so I'm hoping that'll hold it nicely anyway, but I will be gluing it and clamping it in there. I think I'm going to just rub this on some sandpaper just to thin it up a little bit, just because it is such a snug fit. So I'm just going to take some sandpaper to that real quick. Get some glue in there and clamp it in place. The piece is slightly narrower, so that way there's a bit of a gap on this side, because this is more often the side that the saw blade's going to be on if I'm pushing something through. So I just figured it's going to end up getting cut up over there anyway. So since it was a little bit shorter, it was just a piece of scrap wood, I figure I'll offset it to that side that way. That works. And I left it smooth. I just gotta wipe up a little bit of that glue. And since it's such a snug fit, I don't really need to clamp it. It's fine. So adds just a little bit of a catch to it to catch the tail of the wood as you're pushing it through the table saw. So let's let that dry a little bit, and then we'll try it out. We're going to push this through there. So let's get the saw blade up to the right height. And push it through. So there you have it. Pusher. Nice big, solid, big handle. Keeps your hand up away from the blade nicely, and if it gets cut up a whole bunch, which it probably will over time, I can always cut off this bottom piece and then just replace the bottom piece, and I keep the handle and stuff. So that's that version of the pusher block. Who knows, someday I'll build another one, but for now that's that. Make sure you check out the video linked up above for the crosscut cheap DIY crosscut sled I built.
That's what we use to notch the base of this, to notch that out. But real simple, real easy to make. So make sure you check out that video if you haven't already. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.